Right now, today, we're going to be talking about your book, Painting the Invisible Man, which is your second book. Tell us a little bit about what Painting the Invisible Man is.
Well, let me tell you how it started, David. 7 years ago, back in 2001, I was doing some research for a client, Kids Terrain. We had written a musical piece called Tiny Acts of Kindness, which was about kids' responses to the 9/11 event. And there is a musician, the co-writer of the song, a very talented musician named Jamie Noder Thomas, who's up in the Syracuse area, and he was doing a festival up there. Well, my client said to me, look, could you go on to the Syracuse newspapers and see if there were any reviews and get them posted to our website? Well, I grew up in Syracuse, so going on to the Syracuse Post-Standard was like a little bit of a trip home. And what happened, David, was as I went to get the article out of the archives, I made a keying error. Rather than charging one article to my credit card, I charged 10. I mean, no big deal, but more of a hassle to get it off my credit card, you can imagine, than to just, eat the extra $10. So I got the article from my client, and I thought, well, let me see what's going on in Syracuse with people I know. So I typed in a few names, typed in my own name, and then for some reason, I don't know why, I typed in my father's name. And 37 articles came up that referenced him from the 1990s. Now, that wouldn't have been all that unusual, except that he died in 1976. And the one article that caught my attention, the headline said that the FBI had audio tapes of a mob enforcer talking about a 20-year-old murder he got away with. And that murder was the gangland-style killing of my dad.
Oh, my. Now, you just talked about a true story, and I'm just going to read what's on the back cover of your book, which talks about the fictional description of what this book is about. And for a listening audience, you can see how close they are. So the book is fiction, but very closely related to the true story that you just talked about, and I'll read it here. While researching the online archives of the Providence Journal, writer Anna Matteo makes a keying error, a simple mistake that leads her to a path she'd been avoiding most of her life on a journey inside the world of her father. Paulie Matteo killed gangland style more than 2 decades ago. Driven by fate and goaded by a muse in the persona of writer Amy Tan, Anna delves into her painful and unresolved past to uncover the truth about her father, dubbed the Invisible Man. Employing philosophical insight and a sardonic wit, Schiano vividly takes the reader through myriad brushstrokes as her character paints the unfinished portraits of both her father and herself. And where you write of her father and herself, how, in the sense that the true story that you just talked about, how does it paint yourself?
Well, one of the reasons, when I first thought of writing the book, David, I thought of writing it as factual, as more of a memoir. And I thought I could take more of a journalist's approach to the story. But what was happening is that I was keeping a lot of emotional distance from it. So when I make the decision to go and approach it as a fiction, it really allowed me to experience some very raw emotional honesty in looking at myself as a child growing up in a very different kind of family. I've said in some interviews that the book is insight into growing up in a family that's on the fringes of the mafia. And a lot of people take a look at that, and what they know is, mezzo-soprano or growing up like the Gaudis. But it really isn't like that at all. And when I looked back at my life, especially when I was 10 years old, I did very, very strange things as a kid. I used to wear this vest that had, without giving away too much of the story, I had this green vest that I used to wear under my uniform blazer, and I had smoke bombs sewn into certain areas of the vest. And I carried this little pellet gun in a shoulder holster. Of course, today you could never get away with that. I mean, it was rubber pellets, But I used to do these very strange things as a kid because I never felt safe, but I didn't quite understand why. And in the writing of the book, I realized, sure, I want to understand my dad, but I really needed to paint my picture, my family portrait, and a few other characters that I just never really expected, people that I knew in relationship to my father. And another big important picture in that was the defense attorney, which we can talk about a little bit if you'd like.
Now, the book that we're talking about today, Painting the Invisible Man, that title now makes more sense. In the intro, we talked about the book being just released September of '07. What has the response been as it's been released?
The response has been very good. Midwest Review of Books gave it a stunning review. Some of the online book reading groups like Goodreads and Shelfaris have reviewed it. JK Book Blogspot has reviewed it. And what was really wonderful to see, David, because, you know, when you write a book that's personal to you, and the people that you know read it, they're relating you to the story. But people who don't know me, don't know my family, don't know my upbringing, don't know that probably 93% of that story is factual, have had a visceral response to the emotion of it. And that has thrilled me.
And
Can I tell you a little something about the title? Because this is kind of interesting. There's two characters in the story, Anna's cousin Sophia and Sophia's husband Greg Haynes. And they actually are my cousin Terry and her husband Jim. And this is where sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. Years after my father's death, my cousin Terry, who is much younger than me, ended up marrying the defense attorney, the man who got off the man who murdered my dad.
Oh, my.
And that was another portrait that I never expected to have to paint, because I avoided this man for 20 years of my life. I didn't really want anything to do with him because I didn't know how to act around him. I didn't know where he fit in my understanding of him as a person, my cousin who loved him and married him. He's now part of my family, and yet he is such a good attorney, he managed to get off of 2 trials, a hung jury, and then an acquittal, the man who most definitely and without any question was responsible for my father's death. So I had talked to my cousin Terry about this and about the discovery that I had made online, and she's the one that dubbed my father the Invisible Man, and that scene is replayed in the book. It's written into the book, where Anna and her cousin are having dinner, and her cousin mentions Uncle Paulie as being the Invisible Man. One minute you saw him, one minute you didn't. And when Terry actually said that to me that night over dinner, the dinner that she and I had, I knew right then and there the title of the book, Painting the Invisible Man. And I knew right then and there this was something I had to write, but it still took me about 4 years to get my head into the right place to do it. Because I knew to write the story honestly and truthfully, I was going to have to go back and do a lot of research into the trial, into the news articles that surrounded it, and learn things about my father that I just didn't want to know.
If someone wanted to get a copy of your book or to get some more information about your book, where's the best place to go?
Well, the first place to go would be the publisher's website, which is www.reededwards, that's 2 names, R-E-E-D, Edwards, EDWARDES.com. And you can order the book online there, and there's a lot of information. There's interviews with me. There's the reviews of the book around there. And, of course, Amazon.com has it, Barnes & Noble, Alibris, or walk into your local bookstore and say, hey, I want this book.
And, again, the title of the book is Painting the Invisible Man. And your name, of course, is Rita, and I'll spell the last name. It's S-C-H-I-A-N as in Nancy, O, for Rita Schiano. And the website is spelled www.reededwards.com.